You can spend over $100 on groceries now, open the trunk, and still feel like you forgot half the week. That is why a grocery receipt matters more than it used to. A grocery receipt usually feels disposable. Thin paper, fading ink, something left in a bag or flattened on the kitchen counter next to bread, milk, cereal, and whatever else made it home before the frozen food started to soften. Then you read it. Eggs, yogurt, pasta, chicken, apples, peanut butter, paper towels, detergent. Maybe one frozen pizza because one night this week needs to be easy. Nothing on that list sounds luxurious. That is the point. This is not indulgence. It is maintenance. It is the kind of trip meant to keep a household moving through an ordinary week. And still, the total hangs there. Because the number at the bottom no longer feels matched to what made it into the trunk. That gap says something important about the new American middle class. Not that it vanished, not that every household is in crisis, but that ordinary life now asks for more money just to feel half as covered. The groceries still get bought. The card still goes through. Dinner still happens. But the receipt catches something the driveway cannot. It catches how much pressure now sits inside a normal errand. And once a basic grocery trip stops feeling like enough, the story is no longer just about food. It is about what a normal life now costs to maintain. The strangest part is not that groceries cost more. It is that the cart can look careful, even disciplined, and the total still feels oversized. You get to checkout, and what is sitting there is regular life. Coffee, bananas, pasta sauce, sandwich meat, dish soap, cereal, a few things for dinner, a few things to keep the house running. No steak dinner, no party food, no obvious splurge. And yet the register behaves like you were less restrained than you were. That is the new mismatch. The old middle-class grocery trip used to come with a simple feeling: coverage. You could look at the cart and feel like the week was handled. Breakfasts, lunches, dinners, paper goods, maybe one convenience item, maybe one small treat. Now a lot of carts look more like patchwork. A smaller yogurt tub instead of the larger one. Store-brand cereal instead of the one people actually want. Fewer drinks because beverages suddenly feel optional. Produce chosen less by appetite than by risk. What will get eaten in time? What will not go bad? What will not feel like throwing money away by Thursday? Even the extras are not really extras anymore. A rotisserie chicken can feel like strategy. Frozen vegetables can feel like insurance. A store-brand snack is not just a cheaper snack. It is one more adjustment meant to keep the total from drifting into a number that follows you into the parking lot. And people do feel it in the parking lot. Not always as panic, more often as recalculation. Did I get enough for that amount? How many meals is this really? What still has to be picked up somewhere else? How did I spend that much and still leave something out? That is the deeper shift. The errand still gets completed, but it no longer brings the same feeling of being done. It brings a narrower version of it. Enough for now. Enough if everyone is careful. Enough if nothing else comes up. And once a routine purchase stops giving people that basic sense of coverage, the grocery trip changes from spending money to managing exposure. Because by the time the receipt prints, most of the real work has already happened before anyone even walked into the store. The receipt prints at the end. The work starts the night before. That is the part a lot of households do not count, because it does not happen at checkout. It happens in fragments. Standing in the kitchen, checking what is left. Opening the freezer to see if there is one more dinner buried in there. Looking through store apps. scanning digital coupons, deciding whether this is a stock-up trip, a fill-in trip, or just one of those weeks where you are trying to bridge the gap. That kind of planning used to feel like something households under obvious pressure had to do. Now it sits inside homes that still look stable. People who once made a grocery list now make categories. Must have. Can wait. Only on sale. Worth buying in bulk. Not this week. Meals start getting built backward from what is already in the house. A text goes out asking if there is still rice in the pantry. Someone checks whether there is enough coffee to avoid an extra run, because an extra run is never really just coffee. So the price of groceries is no longer just the price of groceries. It is also the price of attention. Shopping used to be a routine. More and more, it feels like pre-production. The list is not just a reminder. It is a defensive document. The store is not just a place to buy food. It is a place where bad improvisation gets expensive fast. And that is when the story stops being about one high total. It becomes a story about what the middle class has actually lost. What the middle class lost is not just money, it is ease. That difference matters. Because middle class was never just about being able to buy visible things. It was about absorbing ordinary life without every routine turning into a decision tree. A bigger grocery bill lands differently when it is competing with car insurance, a utility bill, a school fee, a pharmacy stop, or a repair that cannot wait. None of those costs sound dramatic on their own. That is exactly why the pressure is so easy to miss from the outside. The lights are still on. The fridge is not empty. Lunches still get packed. The house still looks fine. But the margin underneath those routines has gotten thinner. That is the new middle-class contradiction. A family can be fully functional and quietly overmanaged at the same time. They can still buy food. They just cannot buy it casually. They can still keep the house running. They just do it with less room for error, less room for waste, and less room for one extra expense showing up at the wrong time. That is why the grocery store is such a revealing place to look. Food keeps returning. Every week, the same question comes back in a slightly different form. How much ease is left in this household? For a lot of families, the answer is not none. It is less than it used to be. And once that ease starts thinning out, people do not just feel different. They start acting different. You can see it in the new choreography of a grocery week. One store for produce, another for bulk staples. Maybe a drugstore stop for detergent if that is where the deal is. Frozen vegetables kept in reserve so fresh produce can be stretched instead of replaced. Leftovers treated less like leftovers and more like tomorrow's lunch before dinner is even served. People start shopping in layers. First, what the house absolutely needs. Second, what is cheapest here, not necessarily best. Third, what can be stretched, frozen, halved, substituted, or skipped. The kitchen changes too. Bigger bags of rice, more food broken into portions at home, chicken repackaged into freezer bags, bread frozen before it can turn, snacks quietly rationed without calling it rationing. Meals change with it. Fewer one-off dinners, more food that can become something else the next day. A rotisserie chicken becomes sandwiches, then soup. Pasta is made with enough intention to cover dinner twice. Even convenience has to justify itself now. A bagged salad is no longer just a salad. It is a decision about whether time saved today is worth money lost this week. And none of this means people have become more efficient in some clean, empowering way. It just means more labor wrapped around a task that used to be simpler. More planning before the trip. More sorting during it. More processing after it. So the new pattern is not just higher prices. It is ordinary households building systems around the grocery store because the grocery store no longer gives them enough ease by itself. Look at the receipt again, not the total first. The items: bread, eggs, pasta, chicken, yogurt, apples, detergent, the ordinary architecture of a week. On paper, it still looks like middle-class American life is intact. The house gets fed. The lunches get packed. The kitchen keeps moving. Nothing about that strip of paper screams emergency. What it records instead is something quieter. It records how much effort now sits inside a transaction that used to feel routine. That is the real change. The new American middle class has not disappeared from the grocery store. It is still there every week, still swiping the card, still carrying the bags in, still making dinner happen. But the ease that used to live inside that ritual is thinner now. What used to be a normal errand has turned into planning, comparison, substitution, restraint, and follow-through. So the receipt is no longer just proof of what a household bought. It is proof of how much invisible work it took to keep the household looking normal. And that may be the clearest picture of the new middle class in America. Not collapse, not comfort, but ordinary life held together by more effort than it used to require. The bags still make it to the kitchen. The cost is that normal now has to be managed.